listener production.
Hi, it's Helen Smith here with you. Welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up on our deep dive, there are calls for good character references to be abolished completely, especially when it comes to them being used in the sentencing of convicted sex offenders. And why? Well, they can significantly help reduce someone's sentence or create good PR. Former Prime Minister John Howard gave one to Cardinal George Pell, describing him as a person of both high intelligence and exemplary character. And Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis gave one for That 70s Show actor Danny Masterton, who was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison for raping 2 women. That chat coming up, but first, let's check the afternoon headlines. It's Monday, the 29th of September. Police have arrested 4 teenage boys in Melbourne CBD after a police pursuit, resulting in a white BMW being abandoned on Burke Street Mall. According to police, the boys, aged 15 to 17, were allegedly driving erratically on a freeway before making their way into the city, where a pedestrian was allegedly struck who is now being treated with non-life-threatening injuries. However, authorities say there is no threat to the community, and witnesses say several people wearing balaclavas and carrying machetes leapt from the car with smashed windows. It's believed the BMW was allegedly stolen yesterday. And we recently looked into youth crime and machete laws across Australia, and we'll pop the link to that chat in the show notes. Opposition leader Susan Lee is calling for an independent inquiry into the entire 000 ecosystem after Optus reported another outage in New South Wales over the weekend that saw multiple call failures across the state. The telco giant says 9 000 call failures were identified, including one caller who required an ambulance but thankfully was able to get through using a different phone. It comes just weeks after 600 households in South Australia, Western Australia and the Northern Territory were impacted by an Optus 000 outage, resulting in 4 deaths, with Optus saying a routine update to its firewall had caused the problem. Now, Treasurer Jim Chalmers says the government is holding the telco to account, but urges Australians not to lose faith in the 000 system. And Bad Bunny is set to headline the 2026 Super Bowl halftime show. The Puerto Rican Grammy-winning artist has become one of the world's most streamed artists and a global ambassador for Latin music, saying in a statement, "What I'm feeling goes beyond myself. It's for those who came before me and ran countless yards so I could come in and score a touchdown. This is for my people, my culture, and our history." The announcement comes just weeks after Bad Bunny says he excluded the US from his forthcoming world tour due to fears that as a prominent Latino musician, his fans would be subjected to immigration raids. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on good character references with victim survivor Josh Byrnes, the ACT representative from Your Reference Ain't Relevant campaign, after Queensland passed laws restricting the use of good character references in sentencing convicted sex offenders. We look into how character evidence works and why advocates like Josh want them abolished completely. Josh, should we still be allowing good character references when it comes to the sentencing of convicted sex offenders?
I think the answer to that is very simple. No, I don't believe good character references are beneficial to the community, beneficial to victim survivors, and I think they're a detriment to the justice system. I think it allows perpetrators to continue to get away with crimes that are abhorrent, and I don't believe that they should exist in any capacity. Watered down versions or even versions that we continue to apply across the judicial system as we do currently. I just don't think they do what we would expect as a community and as a whole.
So can you briefly explain what is a good character reference and how do they work?
Yeah, so good character reference is how I would define it, is the reference of persons or personnel that have come to get to know the perpetrator during different aspects of their life, whether it be community service, being involved in general social life skills, whether it be social in terms of like whether at the pub, like whether they get to know them, whether they're employers or their colleagues and whatnot. So essentially these references are opinions on the person, on the character of the person that's being convicted. When it comes to the sentencing in particular, I think that it applies to whether they're reformable or whether they have the ability to integrate back into society when the sentencing is complete.
So why do you want good character references scrapped entirely?
So as a victim survivor, I've found the use of character references to be extremely harmful. Just listening to some of my colleagues, some of my other survivors about what they've had to go through with sitting in courtrooms and having to listen to people talk about their perpetrators, about how much of a good person, how much they contribute to society, and it really downplays the crimes that have been committed on these. Well, for us particularly, we're concerned with, child sex abuse offenders, the crimes that have been committed on children. I don't understand how we can sit there and listen to that they're a good person and that they have the ability to come out and they've got a good option for rehabilitation and all these things. And we just don't think as a campaign that should be taken in consideration. We think that it's actually more harmful for victim survivors to have to listen to this, and it really does prevent a lot of people, I think, from really wanting to come forward and talk about their experiences.
We recently saw good character references being used in high-profile cases like paedophile Ashley Paul Griffith, who has pleaded guilty to over 300 charges. How could character references contribute to lighter sentences in cases like this one?
Yeah, well, I think in cases like this, first and foremost, I think these crimes that are committed onto young kids is absolutely abhorrent, and at times it makes me physical sick. I'm a father of a little 2-year-old daughter, and she's in daycare, and just the thought of something like this is just, it makes my world, do somersaults. So I think that the use of these references is designed to minimise a sentence in the incorrect way, in that we're trying to talk about the fairness of the process. And I think that there's a fairness of process that doesn't get considered when we're talking particularly about children. I think that we need to remember that when we talk about character references, and particularly positive character references, is exactly how these people allow themselves to get into positions where they're able to do these crimes. They're able to be good people, they're able to get jobs, they're able to talk and to act like they're completely normal. And I hate using that word because I don't believe that there's really an application of normal across the spectrum anyway. And I think it's a complete contradiction to what the crimes are, trying to apply the terminology of good person or good character to these people. And I think it's completely wrong and extremely harmful to our victim survivors.
Why do you think there has been pushback against the changes to good character references laws?
Yeah, there has been a bit of a pushback in some areas, and I will highlight it's only a very small amount, and it's usually law associations, law societies that want to allow the judicial system judges to have the capacity to apply discretion. They have that now, but I don't think they're utilising it to the best of their abilities. And I think that allowing this ability for them to apply discretion gives way to cases such as where we had in the WA, where we had an incident where we had a perpetrator was found with like terabytes and terabytes of images and videos. Something that we agree is quite disgusting, really. But the judge allowed him to minimise his sentence to 6 months because they found, because of his good character, that he had a high chance of rehabilitation back into society. And I think that's just completely against the grain of what we expect of our judicial system. And I just don't think it's appropriate to apply this. So I think the pushback is to I think it's all about control and authority, and I think it's a very small sort of minority that do have the power and the control and authority, and I simply just don't think they want to give it up.
Another case where we saw good character references being used was in the trial of Luke Zahos, who was found guilty of raping Saxon Mullins. You mentioned this before, but what impact does that have on victim survivors when they're hearing these positive comments about someone who has pleaded guilty or been found guilty of assaulting them?
Yeah, look, I think it's absolutely abhorrent. Upon reading the story and reading and listening and watching the Four Corners program about Saxon and stuff, my heart absolutely went out to her, especially being a victim survivor myself. And again, we need to look at it. Here we are, a young man with a almost air of arrogance and entitlement, put himself in a position to treat another human like this. And I think he had the power of a wealthy family. He had the power of entitlement, the sort of social circles that he was allowed to rely on these people that had power in these areas where Saxon had none. Saxon had her power taken away from her when these acts were committed on her. And I think we need to remember that. We need to remember that in the balance of power, victim survivors have very little. And by allowing the removal of character references is just somewhat giving back to the victim survivors to have the ability to be able to actually have their perpetrators held accountable for the crimes that they've committed.
Some of the pushback included this line that said, character evidence can be an important feature of sentencing. So who actually benefits from good character references?
It's generally one person, and it's the perpetrator that benefits from this. I don't think society benefits from having people like this out in society quicker. I don't think the judicial system benefits from having sentences that really minimise the crimes that are being perpetrated onto victim survivors. Obviously, victim survivors, we go through a lot as it is, and I don't think we have a lot of the power that gets taken away from us. And when it comes to who benefits from this, it's a very, very small minority, as we talked about, those people with the power, the authority, their entitlement. And I just don't think, this is what we're trying to change. As a campaign, we're just trying to give a little bit back to the people that are really being harmed by these crimes.
And Queensland is set to limit the use of good character references in November. What do we know about those new laws? What would they look like?
I've done some reading on basically what they're trying to change or whatnot, and I think it's trying to give more of the ability for judges to utilise their discretion, particularly in regards to the prospects of rehabilitation. I also think that there's some changes in regards to the way that victim statements are also presented in court as well. Again, as a campaign, our co-founders, Harrison James and Jarrett Grice, have been very clear on this. Even with the suggested changes in Queensland, these simply do not go far enough. We are asking for the complete abolition of these character references, full stop. And I just don't think even with these watered down sort of versions and stuff that we go far enough. And I think the wording in the article that was raised was, it's a step in the right direction. And I think after running this game for almost 2 years, I think we've had enough of steps in the right direction. I think we're after actual critical change, and I don't think this goes far enough.
And looking across Australia, do any other states limit their use of good character references?
Every state has application to the law in regards to these use of the character references, howbeit they might be slightly different. In New South Wales, Sentencing Council has provided a report to the New South Wales Attorney General, and we're just waiting for his response. It's same as well in the ACT. We had a really fruitful discussion with the former Attorney General, Shane Rattenbury, and the new Attorney General is definitely on board. We've had some initial discussions, and we look forward to continue working with her with that. In the other states as well, we're starting to have advocates come forward and really want to contribute to the campaign, and we're really focusing on making this a national sort of federal change. And I think we're really critical. It's a really critical part. We're at a position where we need to start seeing some change, and I think once that happens in one or two of the biggest states, and I think we're going to start seeing some real change across the board nationally. I think for too long, victim survivors have been feeling like they're simply witnesses to the prosecution cases, and I think we're actually looking to put them first and foremost, and I think it's time we start doing that.
Josh, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That was victim survivor Josh Byrnes from Your Reference Ain't Relevant campaign. And if you or anyone you know needs help, you can call Lifeline on 131 114 or 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732. But that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. I'll be filling in for Natasha Belling over the next couple of weeks, and we'd love you to subscribe, or you can follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.